Hello and welcome to Chess Please. My name is Andy and today I wanted to cover off a recent game of mine which features a really fun king hunt at the end, and also just a general game of both opponents throwing slobber knockers, trying to knock the other one out before the other one can get their bearings. And this is my video, so it's not going to be me that gets knocked out, but let's jump on into the game. So we start off with our tried and tested Vienna game, and we get into the Vienna Gambit, which is where we push this pawn, your f pawn. Generally considered a pretty risky move to play that f-pawn in the opening because you open up this diagonal for your king. But in the Vienna Gambit, that's kind of what you do. In the hopes that they actually take here, you can push your pawn and harry this knight around while you're developing your pieces all the while. That doesn't happen in this game, so that's all pretty moot. They respond with d5, a very principled response to the Vienna Gambit. And we get this kind of standard enough trade-off. We develop our knight to block from this nasty check from the queen, because oftentimes that checks the king, and you can only really block like this. You can only really block like this if the queen is hounding down here, and then the knight can actually take with a lovely sacrifice, and if you take here, your queen takes your rook. Again, this is all moot because we didn't fall for it, we developed the knight, but just saying, for your games, make sure to get that f knight out. So they put a little more squeeze on that knight to kind of dislodge him, and we actually put some counter squeeze on their knights here. So this is a game of a lot of counter attacking, a lot of like, I'm not going to respond directly to your threats, I'm going to make a bigger threat on the other end so that you have to respond to mine first. And it's kind of who can make the better argument there. They trade off knights there, they don't want any of that smoke. So they bring their bishop out, and again, rather than respond directly, we want to create a different threat of our own. So we bring the queen in here with a nice little check on the king, not the easiest to stop, and we're also hounding down this undefended pawn, which, again, a nice little double attack. We're going to win that pawn. They block with the knight, which is actually a blunder, and this is a miss that we just got too blinkered in our plan. When I came out here, I was like, I'm going to take this pawn, and that was like my goal here. But I forget that they actually just blunder the bishop here. They just didn't move their bishop out of trouble. We could have just taken there, but we got a little bit too, as I say, blinkered on, didn't really see the wood from the trees. We took that pawn. It's a miss rather than a blunder because we're not worse off here. We didn't like throw the game or anything like that, but we could have won the game easier if we just take that bishop. C'est la vie, these things happen. They continue on with their attack. They trade off that knight there. And again, this sort of theme of attack and counter-attack. In this case, they probably might have done a little bit better moving their knight away to safety, because now we can just take with check. And capturing a piece with check is a real delight because they have to respond to you. So this bishop remains in peril. This king has to do something to sort himself out. This bishop remains in peril. So we're doing pretty well here. They step up and block with the queen, but that drops a rook. King steps up, that drops the other rook. Now, this is going really well for us. We are 11 points of material up. This bishop is still in jeopardy. However, before we can go and put our material advantage to use, we also have to realize that our king is bare naked back there on the first rank, and they have 1, 2, 3 pieces developed. It is their move, so this bishop is still in play. They have 3 pieces developed in a crazy dynamic way that is really covering off a lot of the squares around our king, or threatening to. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces on their home squares that really aren't in the mix that much. And we have a queen who has done an incredible job so far of capturing material, but could not be further from the action out here, could not be less involved. So in order to eventually put our material advantage to use, we still have to survive, which is not a done deal given how exposed our king is. So let's see how we continue on. So they bring their queen into the mix, and again, we probably could get away with taking this bishop, and the computer thinks so as well in retrospect, but it's just a hectically dangerous position. Do we want to open up our king even more by allowing the queen to take here, and this bishop and the queen to team up right in front of our nude king? I'm not so sure we do, and in fact I didn't do this in the game, but rather tried to stack the deck back in our favour by kind of undeveloping or taking one of their pieces out of the action by playing d4 and getting this bishop away from this attack. I'm much less confident of my opponent's ability to checkmate me with just the bishop and the queen rather than both bishops and the queen. So this is a good idea just to level the playing field a little in terms of active pieces in the attack. And once again, our opponent, rather than responding to the threat of us taking their bishop or this bishop, decided to set up again some more really scary but ultimately not that impactful checks, because our king has plenty of squares to run away to, and with the dark bishop so out of commission here, blocked off by this lovely pawn chain, the dark squares on this side become a lot safer for the time being. Anyway, so we block that all off, we get our king out of dodge, the bishop moves out of there just to not be captured, so that's the first time where our opponent kind of concedes a little ground and doesn't create a bigger threat. Now, I'm not sure what threat they could have created, but it's the first sign of like, okay, we are not just swinging blows anymore. They're kind of trying to hang on, which allows us to take one of their bishops. And again, we permanently disable their dark square control, which gives us a nice little edge. Not that we needed an edge, but it gets us closer to putting our material advantage to use. Now the queen takes here, and again I want to emphasize we have 4 pieces that are undeveloped, and a byproduct of their undevelopment is they're all on this back rank here, which makes the back rank a very crowded place. And the king has to go back to the back rank, or may have escaped out here, but that looks a little more uncomfortable. And with the king back here, queen takes this pawn, and now we have to be really careful not to allow a draw, because if we make a defensive or a prophylactic move like our opponent did when they moved their bishop back, let's say for example we just we just get our queen back in the mix or something like that, we're in real trouble here, because then they can do something like this where they check the king, and because of all the shrapnel we have on our first rank, we actually only have one move. We can just block like that and the queen comes in here, and that's checkmate. So we need to be sure to start firing blows from here. So at this point, this is where the king hunt comes into play.
The hunt is on.
The hunt is on, okay? Because now, as I say, we are a couple of moves from peril ourselves, but our opponent is actually in full peril. And from here on out, we do not let up on the gas. We bring our first bishop out with check. Okay, happy days. The king not really going to block here because we can just take there. All sorts of trouble coming for the king. King steps aside here, and now I'm thinking, oh, maybe if we bring our queen out here, you know, backed up by the bishop, that's checkmate. It's not quite, because the king can escape here, and then again maybe get himself out to a little bit more breathing room, which is the opposite of what we want. So we take the opportunity to bring our other bishop out. 2 checks in a row here. Okay, where's the king going to go now? King's not going anywhere, so he just blocks with the pawn, which makes it a little harder to escape into the open water here once we bring our queen over here into his grill. Only move there, king has to step aside. Happy days. Give another check. We are not letting the pressure off. King steps into open field, and again, I don't mind this open field because we're much more in control of what's happening here with our pawns, our queen, our bishop, and our rook being able to come in, and our rook is going to take this opportunity to come on in and really put the squeeze on the king. So there's very quickly the avenues are running out for this king. He steps aside here, but the queen is now backed up by this rook, so she can take that pawn. King steps in here, takes our bishop, which is at this stage fine. Again, we are still 10 points of material up, so it's not a real issue at this point. Queen takes another pawn here. However, we did miss mate in 2, unfortunately, so our king hunt isn't perfect, but it is relentless, because we could have brought our rook up here, and now the king only has 2 moves. King can come here. If king comes here, we just take like that. That's fine. But if we take that back one more step, king also can come up here, and this is also still just checkmate. There is nowhere for him to go. So we did miss that. So a slightly imperfect king hunt. But anyway, we keep the checks on up. They're able to... Oh, this is not what happened. It's here. So anyway, we come back to the position where we were able to keep our checks up, force the king into more and more uncomfortable territory. They block with the bishop. We get our pawn involved, backed up by the rook here as well. Part of my mind was like, are we losing him here? Is he getting away? We bring our bishop, who hasn't been involved since the second check, in for what I believe is the 9th check in a row for the king to step up. And then our H rook, who hasn't done a dicky bird all game. He's just sat there in the corner, watching things go by, saunters on in to deliver the checkmate blow on H3. So we managed to chase the king all across the board. So just taking that back to replay the king hunt here, we bring the bishop out, king steps aside, we bring the other bishop out, blocks with the pawn, we bring the queen in, king moves, we bring the queen closer, king moves, we bring the rook in, king moves, we take the pawn with the queen, king takes the bishop, we take another pawn, bishop blocks. We bring the pawn in, the king steps forward. We bring the bishop back in, king steps forward, and then the lazy, languid, quicksilver rook just steps on in to deliver the final blow. And we win the game with a lovely little king hunt. So I was delighted with that. It just felt really fun. It felt like real slobber knocker chess, as we said. That is going to be all from me today, folks. If you did have a good time, feel free to subscribe and stick around, or leave a comment or a thumbs up. And most of all, enjoy your chess. Thanks very much. Have a good one.